decarbonization. Of course, reducing emissions from operations and striving to ensure that emissions from the use of energy and the like. Development of carbon sinks, of course, with continued support and promoting the development of emission sinks and such as the CCUS technology and the natural sinks. Of course, the open public support for Paris Agreement goals. The energy system collaboration, and of course the transparency in the oil and gas. It's a good strategy to. We also know some factors that will enhance the effectiveness when we bring it home to Nigeria as it is. Of course, we know that factors such as government, unstable policy, environment, and legal and regulatory frameworks. Political commitment or the willpower and technology, slow development in necessary technology breakthrough, or even slow adoption of cutting-edge technology. So it is my hope that that the SPE week will serve as a reference for government, policymakers, regulators, the energy organizations, academia, and the industry to forge this global partnership and catalyze collaboration in achieving a net zero future. I urge us to, have an open mind and be ready to attract the new knowledge that will be shared in this SPE week opening ceremony. Let me not also fail to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for being here. Your presence enriches this gathering, and your contributions would undoubtedly shape the discussion. Let us see this moment with great expectation and with a sense of purpose. With the permission of the council members, the board of directors, and the section chair and her board, I'd like to welcome every one of us to the 2023 SPE week, and may our time together be filled with inspiration, enlightenment, and joy. Thank you for listening, and God bless you.
For that wonderful opening remark. And that teases us into the conversation. This is an SPE week where captains of industry, one of the arguably the best and foremost petroleum engineering society we have in country and internationally. But while he was giving his speech, a lot of noble personality walked in, and prior to them has also been here. We're privileged to be discussing today's topic with excellent and knowledgeable people, and we'll have to recognize their presence. To do that, I'd like to invite Ofure Ugege, who's the chairperson for the SPE Week Committee. Thank you very much, Ofure, as to take the mic to introduce the dignitaries and bring it to you.
Thank you, Captain J. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As moderator has mentioned, we would love to recognize the presence of senior members and dignitaries that we have present this morning. And starting from those online, I see Nigeria Council Chair, Mr. Sahaluddin Taghi. You're welcome, sir. I also see the presence of some of our section directors, Othman. You're welcome, Alaji. Also in the room, we have the presence of the section chair of SPE section 103, Madam Ngozi Okonkwo. We also have the branch chairperson, Sabiye Petro, present with us this morning. And all members of the board, the technical information chair, Dr. Judo Smubi, who's also the moderator for today, and Madam Ella Muzan, who's also going to be joining us to moderate the panel session. And to our speakers on the call, I see Epion Okon already. I also see Jomoni on the call, Fayama Okoli, and Lucino Lanio. Thank you so much for accepting to be a part of this remarkable event. And thanks so much for your time. We look forward to an engaging session with you all. And in the course of the session, we'll still have cause to recognize other members that will join us. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. I'm supposed to take the Google message. We have the ARD at the moment. Okay, so we'll leave that, and then when she comes, she'll take the message from ARD, the Google message. So now we'll go straight to having the introduction to one of our industry captains, who will be taking an industry actress. He has a wealth of leadership experience in the oil and gas sector, and is currently the General Manager of Wealth Operations, where he's focused on diverse leadership responsibilities as a member of the country leadership team, member of Wealth Regional Conventional Oil and Gas Leadership Team, and accountability for a USD of over 0.8 billion budget for wealth delivery across shell companies in Nigeria. He's an active SPE member. Joseph is passionate about community development and is part of the Rotary Club of Port Harcourt. And ladies and gentlemen, I was going to add something else, but it's not here, so I'll leave it out. I'm smiling. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, if your hands are not busy, let's make welcome Joe Mordi, GM of Nigeria, on his industry address. Thank you very much, sir. If you can hear us, you can go on and unmute and turn on your video if that works, and the floor is yours. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, all. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear, sir. Good morning.
Yeah, I hope you can see the video as well.
Yes, not yet, but yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
The section chair, SPE, Port Harcourt Section 103, SPE, Nigeria Council Chair, immediate past section chair, board members, industry leaders, members of SPE Section 103, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to be given this opportunity to have this discussion around navigating the transition, exploring strategies for a sustainable future with oil and gas. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SPE 2023 week opening ceremony. It is exciting to see board members, ex-official members, non-affiliate members of SPE, and fellow industry leaders create this inaugural occasion that ushers in the SPE week for Section 103 Port Harcourt. Thank you for joining me today as we explore the delicate balancing act our nation and all that large face in navigating the transition towards a sustainable energy future. This transition is not only crucial, but demands an all-inclusive approach to ensure harmony between energy needs, environmental stewardship, societal development, and economic growth. We stand at a pivotal juncture in history where the decisions we make today will profoundly impact the generations that follow. As we grapple with a vision to reduce carbon emission and mitigate climate change, the oil and gas industry finds itself at the epicenter of this global transformation. The challenge is not only to adapt, but to lead the way in creating a sustainable energy landscape. First and foremost, it is important to recognize the incontestable role that oil and gas play in fueling human progress and prosperity. Without the energy from fossil fuel sources, the living standard of the world will not be what it is today. So as we grapple with the challenges of the present, looking forward to the future, we have to take cognizance of the role and the importance of this energy source to world security and peace. These energy sources have been the bedrock of our economies, driving innovation, powering industries, and lifting millions out of poverty. Yet, the environmental consequences of our reliance on fossil fuels are evident. While the transition towards cleaner and more sustainable energy source is imperative, it is important for the industry of today to maximize its value to propel the vision of a future energy landscape where the drawbacks of conventional oil and gas are minimized to the utmost extent. In the course of the last 1 week, the COP28 happened in Dubai. With over 1,400 delegates, one can say that Nigeria is well keyed in to the challenges of the energy transition, and therefore we are ready to work to ensure we deliver on the promise of keeping climate change to less than 1.5 degrees. The IEA recent World Energy Outlook 2023 shows that in order for us to be able to achieve the energy transition we seek in a sustainable manner, we have to act on 5 interdependent measures. And the central theme of these pillars are things we need to do between now and 2020. And these are: 1, triple global renewable power capacity. 2, double the rate of energy efficient programs. Third one is commitment by our industry to align with the activities of the Paris Agreement, starting by cutting methane emissions from our operations by 75%. The fourth element of this focus is around ensuring that we have large-scale financing mechanisms to triple clean energy investments in emerging and developing economies. And that is where Nigeria comes into play. And most importantly, we must commit to measures that ensure an orderly decline in the use of fossil fuels, including an end to new approvals of unabated coal-fired power plants. If you look at these measures, none of them can work without the other. We cannot triple renewable energy capacity without a funding mechanism to be able to do that. There is always someone who has to pay the bill. We cannot be able to derive energy efficiencies that we seek if we do not have the investment in renewable sources, investment in technologies that drive energy efficiency. While waiting for renewable to take greater role in our energy supply mix, we still need our industry to continue to power progress. So, ladies and gentlemen, the challenge we face is enormous, but as an industry, we should use this as an opportunity to be on the table when the decisions are made. Hence, the question that comes to mind now is, how can we as an industry navigate the transition to achieve the optimal balance? One strategy lies in collaboration governments, industry players, academia, and shareholders must come together to create a coherent, progressive, and fit for the future policy, governance, and regulatory framework that is required to achieve the aim of our energy transition. The days of copying solutions from one country to the other are gone. We need to create homegrown solution that leverages international best practice, taking into consideration our developmental needs. Additionally, we need to have a framework that clearly establishes targets that we can work to. We have some of them in Nigeria that clearly highlights when we are going to flare out. We have to have the right governance and oversight of what has been outlined. We need to define market rules. We have to attract investment into the future energies as well as transition energies like gas. We need to facilitate the scaling up of technology. Of course, reduce cost. All these are required for us to have a seamless integration of low carbon technologies. It is our intent to promote and expedite the transition in alignment with society progress rather than impede it. If we try to impede the transition towards renewable source, then certainly we're going to be on the wrong side of society. So as an industry, we should work in lockstep with society, either setting the pace or moving at pace with society. Innovation is quite critical in this balancing act. The oil and gas industry has a rich history of technological advancement, and it is time to channel that innovation towards sustainable solution. A lot is happening, but we still need to do more. Investing in research and development for cleaner extraction methods, carbon capture technologies, and renewable energy sources within the industry's purview is imperative. By doing so, we not only reduce our carbon footprint, but also secure a future where energy is harnessed responsibly. In addition to collaboration and innovation, creating a conducive investment climate is essential to attracting funding, so financing for projects to aid this transition. This will facilitate diversification of energy portfolio. Companies such as Shell are doing a lot to diversify their portfolio by channeling investment to renewables. For example, in Nigeria here, we have Olon that has been funding lots of ventures that provide off-grid access to energy in the Niger Delta. SPDC and its joint venture partners also continue to fund lots of projects that provide gas, a key transition fuel to both domestic and the export market. We also have the Shell Nigeria Gas Limited that delivers domestic gas to over 135 industrial customers across the country. These are just a few examples that come to mind. I know many of your companies have similar activities towards your goal of fostering the energy transition. By diversifying their portfolios and investing in renewables, our industry and company can remain relevant in an evolving energy landscape while contributing to a more sustainable future. For a fossil fuel dependent nation as Nigeria, a balanced transition that factors in the importance objectives of economic development, growth, energy access, and environmental sustainability is important. Given our peculiarities, we should not trade one for another. That is why the theme for today's discussion is timely and relevant. In conclusion, the energy transition is undeniably challenging, but it is also a gateway to unprecedented opportunities. By embracing innovation, fostering collaboration, diversifying our energy portfolios, and creating a conducive investment climate, we can navigate this transition successfully. The oil and gas industry has the potential not just to adopt, but to lead the way in building a sustainable future, one where energy is abundant, clean, and accessible to all. Thank you for your attention. Let us embark on this journey together towards a future that is not just sustainable, but thrives on the delicate balance we strike today. Thank you.
Maybe you should actually add a lecturer in your profile, sir. Next time, because you took us on a journey. And that must be that professor somewhere in the station. Thank you very much. So what we listened to now was a journey where he highlighted first, admitting the fact that transition is important. I think we all in this room, and as a nation, have accepted and as an engineer, transition is important. However, we know that we need a balanced way to transit, and that's why we're having this topic, this discussion, because if we transit anyhow, we feel anyhow, and we'll be in the bottomless pit by ourselves anyhow. Thank you. And that's why he has highlighted carefully things we could do. And what stood out for me was the conversation around collaboration. So it's not a matter of them and us, and then governance. We need to have the right policies. We need to do the right things in the midstream, in the upstream, the downstream to attract the right investors. Gas is here for us. And we can see numerous projects that's going on across the nation to enhance that. The market is there. We need to put a bit more in our investment drive and use leverage on technology, things like CCS, and what we can do within our space. That's my own notes. I know you've got yours. Digest it, use it to impact your nation, use it to impact your cycles. That is how this message gets home. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, let's give a resounding round of applause to Joseph Morley for that one industry address. We switch gears. Our industry leader, I want to believe is currently on the line. Ella, okay, thank you. He will be taking the keynote speech, and he will be speaking on the theme, the evolving role of oil and gas. Yeah. That should have been. Okay, so if you can see them, carry on. One of those transition things has happened here. Make do with that. So I'll invite the council chair SPE in Nigeria, Talibuddin Tahi. Adam Misa, if I didn't get it very well, I tried. He is the head asset and investment management in NPC Limited. He is a graduate of geology from University of Maiduguri. He has an MSc in petroleum engineering from Herotwat University. The privilege of personality as the leader of SPE at the critical time ladies and gentlemen, minds together as we work on. Thank you very much. Now, if you can hear us, please carry on. We'll fix a bit of some of our technical issues in Port Harcourt, but we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you very much. The mic is yours, sir.
Thank you very much for the warm receipt and standing on all existing protocols. Good morning, colleagues. I must start by commending Port Harcourt section for putting together this this SPE week. The theme for this week, evolving role of oil and gas in achieving a balanced transition, I think is very timely, especially, leaning on to Mr. Joseph Modi's industry address. I'm sure the audience would have to accept that the transition is real. In every fora that I attend and I have the opportunity to speak, I always hammer out on that reality. The energy transition is real. It may not be as aggressive as intended, but it is real. Today, when you travel out to other countries, especially the global north countries, I would charge you to task yourselves. Count the taxis. For every 10 taxis, you would realize that at least 5 to 6 are EVs. They're electrically driven. This just tells you that there's a systematic, process of phasing out the oil and gas. It may not be achievable by the time set by the respective parties, but clearly there's a move, a deliberate move and step towards that. If you would permit me, I would want to share my screen. I'll just go through the keynote. Let me.
Yes, please go ahead and share, sir.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to set that out. Sorry, apologies. I'm just having. I'm having issues sharing. I don't know why. It's blocking me. Is that from the other end? Okay, can you see my screen now? Is that okay? Can you see the screen? Can my screen be seen, please? Can you confirm?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. All right. So let me just put it on a slideshow. Okay. Okay, is that good now? Slideshow?
Yeah, on my side, yes.
Okay. Really, apologies. I'm having. Okay. So the evolving role of oil and gas in achieving a balanced transition. I think this is really a timely theme, especially considering the fact that the global South countries are at a position where we cannot move in accordance to the pace of the global northern countries. The global energy landscape, of course, we all know, is going through tremendous changes. And that is what I started with by mentioning to you that the transition is real. The push to move from fossil fuels to cleaner energy is very real. There's no doubt about that. But this will come at a cost. So that cost, can we handle that cost? Is it possible? Who will fund it? So the push is there. Yes, we are moving towards the expected levels of development to achieve economic emancipation. This is something that has happened over the centuries in the global northern countries. We are at a stage that we have abundant resources. These resources are the key to our economic development. Now you have this stare at your face. You need to drop what you have and move to something that is very expensive. Is it realistic? There is no doubt that the globe in itself is still reliant on oil and gas. I'll give you an example. The Ukraine-Russia issue. The West found itself in the middle of a quagmire. They needed to survive. They had to immediately switch back or resort to the dirtiest form of energy, or rather the dirtiest form of fuel, which was coal. We had situations where countries were dumping their windmills and converting them to coal centers where they could generate energy. And that is the reality of it. For any country, it is always the best to have a robust energy mix. I spoke on this last week. When you talk about energy mix, a combination of your oil, your gas, your nuclear, your solar, your wind, your biomass, and so on and so forth. With a robust energy mix, you would find yourself in a very comfortable position. Do we have that in the global southern countries? Let's take Nigeria, for example. Today, our primary source of energy is oil and gas. We use kerosene to cook. We use LPG to cook. We need PMS to drive our vehicles. We need diesel to get our factories working, our industries. Can we actually move immediately, dump these, and adopt renewable energy? How efficient is that renewable energy? The reality of the fact remains that you have to find a common ground, a ground where you can actually use what you have, but then gradually grow to the desired energy source, cleaner energy, renewable energy. That is the reality. And that is what this theme is all about. How do you balance that? So we have established that fact that there's the need for a balanced transition. But how will that happen? I spoke about energy mix, very important. I'll still stick to Nigeria as an example. In the past, you know, solar was for the affluent. Today, just take a journey, a road journey across villages, and it will surprise you. The first time I saw it, I was really amused. I was going to Mina. Along the line, I saw villages and, you know, the shop owners, people that had these refrigerators with solar panels. So something is happening. Solar was very expensive in the past. Today, a lot of households have adopted to that. You go to estates, you see roofs proliferated with solar panels. Maybe 4, 6, 8. People are using the little because people are understanding, you know, that in actual fact, you can invest in this renewable energy, right? Solar. Yes, initially it is a heavy capital, but at the end of the day, you would realize that it saves on the cost of diesel. It saves on the cost of PMS. So there's that gradual acceptance, but it cannot happen overnight. I'll use my house as an example. I have solar panels. I use an inverter with solar panels, but the energy that I can generate from my diesel generator or my PMS generator, you know, outstrips the energy that my solar panel gives me. Now, I'm still using that my house as an example. You heard me saying diesel, PMS, solar. So I have a little energy mix in my own house also. So when diesel is not there, at least I can get PMS. PMS is cheaper than diesel. And then I have my solar to complement. And that is how a nation should work. That is how countries should work. You know, you need to have that energy mix to drive your economic fortunes, to build industries, generate employment. Very important. Transition is real. For us here, we need to have that balance. Now, I'll still use Nigeria as an example, and then maybe other African countries. We have oil and gas in abundance. We are asked to move to net zero. Timelines have been set as we speak. COP28 is ongoing. I'm sure a lot of discussions will come out of that. In the previous COP, a lot of countries made some commitments. In Nigeria, we are striving to reach net zero by 2060. Is it achievable? Other developing countries committed to 2050. Some are even pushing a kind of aggressive schedule by saying by 2030 we'll achieve this, by 2035 we'll achieve that. Oil companies are also moving in that line. Financing arms are making financing, access to finance, pretty difficult for oil and gas projects and businesses. Just to drive down that reality that we must move to cleaner energy, renewable energy, net zero. I presented a paper last week, and there was an analysis from Wood Mackenzie. For those countries, there is no country. All those countries that have made commitments of meeting 2050, based on the reality on ground today, based on what we are seeing, no country can achieve the commitments that they made unless if they ramp up research, innovation, putting in place the required infrastructure. I have seen 3 scenarios. Best case to achieve those commitments made at the last COP, the industry would spend an average of $3 trillion annually. Is that realistic? It can be, but then there will be a shift of priorities. So it will mean us stopping to drill our wells, stopping to, put in our gas processing facilities, our oil flow stations, our refineries, and then a total investment in renewables. But is that really achievable? These are questions that we need to ask ourselves. So for those of us that are aspiring to move towards the developed nations, countries like Nigeria, we have abundant oil and gas. We need the funds from that oil and gas to develop towards net zero. Because you can invest in your oil and gas, use what you're getting, and then invest in that renewable energy infrastructure. Otherwise, the developed countries, right, the global north, should provide that alternative. Funding sources. I know commitments were made in the last COP. We have not seen anything. I don't know what will come out in this COP. Maybe something may come out of it. We still have some days to see. It ends on the 12th of December. So we'll see what comes out of that. We need our existing resources, our oil and gas, to gradually fund and move towards net zero. So this slide also talks about that. The funding, of course, technology does not come cheap. Clearly mute your mics, please, if you're not speaking. Please. Of course, technology does not come cheap. You need funding to develop technology. You need funding for research. Yes, we have new areas of research. We have new technologies. We have seen the carbon capture and storage technologies, especially in the developed countries. These are very good initiatives. And I think, well, maybe at a point, they may need to be subsidized for us. Or we, like I said, get our funds and, invest in these kind of technologies. I've also mentioned this, that the oil and gas is very important. For us in Nigeria, we know that, in fact, our country is heavily dependent on oil and gas. A lot of investments are going into oil and gas. You have heard of the Dangote refinery. You have heard of the Bua refinery. In my own company, NNPC Limited, today, we're spending so much on our refineries, Port Harcourt, the two, the old and the new, Warri, Kaduna. All these are investments, that are going in for immediate value to better the lives of the citizens. Because we're heavily dependent on PMS. We're heavily dependent on diesel. We need the funds to come in to develop our infrastructure. So, Mr. Modi spoke about the challenges, no doubt about it. Environmental concerns, it's very glaring. At a point, for those of us that are in Port Harcourt, at a point, we knew what was happening there. Soot everywhere. You park your car, tomorrow morning you come, it's all covered with soot. In your houses, soot. Environmental degradation, it is real. No doubt about it. So it behoves on us as oil and gas industry professionals to be responsible to our environment. Today, funding And I had mentioned this earlier, and I'll reiterate, funding is becoming very, very tight. For our projects, if you cannot display or if you cannot show that the projects you are prioritizing, you are developing, will be developed in a responsible manner, you will not get those funds. ESG, environmental, social, governance. To governance, it is being scrutinized. So this is real, no doubt about it. And it is in our hands. Yes, we have issues of vandalism, oil spills due to vandalism, and so on and so forth. That is where government steps in. And I think it was something that Mr. Modi mentioned. Policies, regulations, very, very important. Provision of security, it is the government's responsibility to provide security. The oil and gas investor is expected to come in, and invest, develop. But there are roles that everybody, it's a shared role. Collaboration was something that Mr. Modi mentioned. We have to collaborate. If the investor comes in and feels it is the government's responsibility, yes, it is, and he relaxes and says, all I have to do is produce, at the end of the day, everybody's fingers will be burnt. So we need to collaborate to move this forward, to get those investments so that we can invest for the future, invest towards net zero. That is where the balance is. I mentioned earlier the Ukraine-Russia crisis. No doubt, oil and gas is at the center of geopolitical tension. We have seen what has happened in Iraq. We have seen what happened in Libya. We have seen countries crumbling right from the past, centuries ago. Countries invade countries, kingdoms invade kingdoms to enrich themselves, to get energy. It is something that is a reality. And it takes us back to that energy mix. Because for you to secure yourself, you need to ensure that you have the different sources of energy. When one is down, you can use the other. Ukraine-Russia conflict was a perfect example on that. Again, collaboration, diplomacy. It cannot be done by one person. You have those countries that are advantaged, you have those that are less advantaged. If we really have to meet at the center, we have to collaborate. That is where the balance is. Accept what I have, what I can use to generate those funds so that I can put in the right infrastructure to achieve net zero. Fortunately for us, we have been singing the developing countries. And in today's world, gas is seen as an acceptable transition fuel, the fuel that will lead us into the future, the fuel that will lead us towards net zero. So in conclusion, the evolving role of oil and gas is not deniable. You cannot deny it. It is very important. That is, for us here, for those developing countries, we need that oil and gas to move towards net zero. And that is the only way we can achieve a balanced transition. We have accepted, yes, environmental degradation, climate change issues. It's true. We have seen it. Oil and gas has actually affected environments. It has actually polluted climates. it behoves on us to be responsible. We, as an oil and gas industry, should embrace cleaner technologies. It is the way forward, no doubt, for our health, for the health of our environment. As an oil and gas industry, we can contribute positively in this discussion of a balanced transition. Today, SPE Port Harcourt section is leading the light. You have created a theme for a week to discuss around how that balance can be achieved. And I'm sure by the end of that week, or this week rather, we would have a lot of ideas, a lot of exchanges, a lot of contributions that will assist towards securing that balancing act. Thank you so much, SP Port Harcourt section, for leading the trail on this. And we look forward to the outcome of the SPE week. Thank you very much. Hello? Okay. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Ah, okay.
Sorry, can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, clearly. Thank you very much.
Oh, I was just reiterating your comment and adding a bit of extra phrase that SPE is leading the light and SPE Port Harcourt seems to be pointing the light. Thank you very much, sir, for that wonderful keynote presentation. Couple of nuggets. First presentation has admitted that is important. Second speaker have just reiterated that it's real. So that's to say that it's important and real. But there's an element that is very key, which is the element of cost. Who's going to bear the brunt? Who's going to finance the transition? And that's why we can't really what we've got at the moment. Because we are all for ourselves and God for us all. So we are taking the initiative as a nation to find the energy mix, which is the common ground for us. And I particularly like your example, Chair, sir, on what's going on even in your home. You've got the petrol for power, you've got the diesel for power, and you also have the solar for power. So I think that's a practical example of energy mix in our homes. Thank you very much, Chair, for that. Wonderful. And with one more round of applause, let's thank you. Presentation well delivered. So deeply in this conversation, as you can clearly see, it's an exciting one, and time is being spent without realizing. So deep in this conversation, we'll take it to the panel, where we'll have opportunity to hear a bit more from people, eloquent, diverse, clarity in this field, and then ask questions. I'm sure we might not be out of place to take one or two questions during or after the panel to probably the industry notes, or also the notes from Joe Monday. So if there are questions, we could use the opportunity. So what the contribution of this panel session is Ella Modan. She is a production reduction technologist with Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria, SPDC, where she ensures that wells are producing safely and optimally. She has a decade of experience in wells and reservoir management, well integrity, well completion designs, workover, and well test operation. And as a project planner advisor for a flagship 1 billion project in SPDC. She is skilled in stakeholder management, project portfolio management, and end-to-end delivery, ensuring technical robustness, best-in-class delivery for production performance. Ella holds a BNG in Chemical Engineering from UCSI University, Malaysia, and a Master of Science Petroleum Engineering from the Herotwas University, United Kingdom. Her contribution in the oil and gas industry spans her technical knowledge sharing through authoring and co-authoring of 3 technical papers on production optimization and HSC published on SPE 1 Petro. Technical presentations, coaching, and mentoring of over 10 young professionals and students, and as a member of 2022 ATSC World Simulation Committee. She joined SPE as a student member, transitioned into professional membership with the Port Harcourt section, where she has functioned in several capacities, most recently as the treasurer of the section, and previously as secretary and young professionals chair in the 2018 and 2021 ODA, respectively. She served for 2 years as the young professional subcommittee chair for SPE Nigerian Council. She is the recipient of both the International and Regional Young Professional Outstanding Service Award in 2023 and 2022, respectively. Ella loves to read autobiographies, and she's married with 2 lovely sons. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see the pretty face on the screen and on the picture, I will make welcome the moderator of the celebration. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Captain Jay, and thanks everyone for a kind introduction. So yeah, we're going into the panel now, and first of all, just to thank everyone for being here. We have over 50 people on the call and quite a number in the room. It's SPE Week, SPE Section 103, where we celebrate all that we are as an industry and all that we are as oil and gas professionals. So it's a thing of joy to be here as we open the SPE Week today. And as has been teed up by the industry address and the keynote speaker, thanks again, Mr. Joe Modi and Mr. Salahuddin for those well-given presentations. They have mentioned very important selling points as part of their presentations. And in the panel, we'll delve deeper into this conversation, especially how the role that we all play as professionals in this industry and as various stakeholders. So again, the topic is the evolving role of oil and gas in achieving a balanced transition. It's not new. We've been told that it's real, it's imminent upon us, and this is not the first transition. So in the past century, we've had transitions from biomass, coal, and currently oil and gas. So now we're in the transition where we're going from oil and gas to renewable energy sources. And that is very important to limit the impact of climate change. As of 2019, 85% of the energy mix was oil and gas. And so it's interesting to see how that dynamic changes. And as oil and gas professionals, what the role that we play in achieving this balanced transition. Mr. Joe Modi called it a delicate balancing act. So we're looking at the balanced transition where we can balance the effects of energy security and affordability while ensuring that we limit the impact on our environment. So climate change is important, but how do we also ensure that we have energy that is available to all globally, especially in places like Nigeria and Africa that are considered energy poor. So without further ado, let me introduce our panel. We have a crop of industry leaders that are going to give us their perspectives on this topic, and I'm sure it will be an interesting one. In no particular order, we have first engineer Elosino Olaniyan, and okay, her video is up, yeah. Briefly, her bio, she graduated with a degree in chemical engineering from the University of Benin, Nigeria. Her career in the Nigerian oil and gas industry spans 3 decades of technical and leadership roles in field development, product optimization, hydrocarbon resource volume management, business planning, and in more recent years, asset commercial. She's currently the general manager, safety and environment for Shell companies in Nigeria. Elosino's first broadening role took her into SPE commercial function, where she led the domestic gas supply integration to support the vision of credible and profitable domestic gas business in Nigeria, which is highlight part of this discussion today. Elozino did so well that she became the commercial and non-operated venture manager for SPEC, up until her current role as GM Safety and Environment. She has played important roles as a corporate lead for the Women in Shell Network, and is also a member of several professional bodies, including SPE, the Council of Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, where she's a fellow of both the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the Nigerian Society of Chemical Engineers. Elo is a firm believer in yearly personal development goals and recently got certified as a scuba diver. I think that deserves a round of applause. To include exploring scenic diving locations. She's a fitness enthusiast and is intentional about kicking off her day with a daily morning walk. Elo is married and has 3 wonderful children, so you can see she's a lady of different parts. And it's exciting to have you, Engineer Elo, on the panel today. Thanks for honoring our invitation.
Thank you, Ella.
Great, thank you. We also have today Engineer Epi Okon, and if he also could come on video, Engineer Epi. He joined SEPTAT in February 2018 as Executive Director / Operations Director, and was appointed Director of New Energy on the 15th of July 2022. Engineer leadership and continuous improvement for Royal Dutch Shell. He's also held different appointments, including General Manager Deepwater Production, Manager Offshore Assets, Manager North Field, and Deputy Vice President Technical Qatar Shell, with key achievements in delivering the commissioning startup and early production phase of 2 mega projects for Qatar Shell, as you can see there. Engineer Okon has 30 years extensive experience, which covers upstream and integrated oil and gas operations across Africa, Europe, USA, Middle East, and Nigeria. We can see he's done quite a lot in the industry, and it's a privilege to have you here. He's several boards, public listed and non-listed, and is a member of several professional organizations, including SPE, NSC, and CORE. Engineer Okon is an alumni of IMD Business School and Harvard Business School in Switzerland and US. Yeah, we can see your video. We also have on our panel today, Ms. Fayama Okoli. Ms. Fayama Okoli received her bachelor's degree in petroleum engineering from the University of Port Harcourt and a master's degree in petroleum engineering from Hertfordshire University, UK, Scotland. She started her career as a logging while drilling engineer, providing open hole logging and formation evaluation services in Nigeria and other sub-Saharan African countries. She has since held several technical and leadership roles in petrophysics, geomechanics, and reservoir engineering. Fayama's experience in the E&P industry spans over 18 years with Schlumberger, and with demonstrated expertise in deep water and onshore drilling, project management, and excellence in execution. Fayama is currently the Schlumberger Digital Solutions Delivery Manager and in Nigeria and West Africa, and has co-authored SPE Technical Lagos. She's an active member of SPE Lagos Section 61 and was the 2021-2022 SPE Lagos Section Chairman. Ms. Fayama, we're happy to have you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And also on this esteemed panel, I call it the who is who of the oil and gas industry. We have Mr. Adeleye Falade. Leye Falade is a graduate of electronic engineering from the University of Ibadan and holds an MBA from MBA Business School, University of Reading, UK. He's worked for over 27 years with the Shell Group and is an accomplished business leader with broad and significant global exposure in the integrated gas and upstream business, with assignments that span various countries in Europe, Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. He's a chartered engineer and a member of SPE and a fellow of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. He's currently the country chair of Shell in Namibia. Mr. Leye, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, great. So, as we mentioned, we've highlighted the topic at hand, the role of oil and gas in achieving a balanced transition. This is a very important topic, and for some reason it has coincided with COP28, so it seems we're doing something right. We'll first of all look at it from a global perspective. And we've been talking about the energy transition for quite a while. And I would think in the recent, the past few years, that sort of buzz became louder, especially because of the happenings in the world. So just from a global perspective, I would like to start with Engineer FE. What do you think, what's your perspective on the progress so far? The recent developments in the energy transition and in the drive to achieve net zero emissions by 2050.
All right, good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're at. Sorry, I have a cold, so my voice isn't really very good. I hope you can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Okay.
All right, thanks. I mean, it's a great pleasure to see everyone. People I haven't seen for a while. That's the beauty about SPE. So thank you so much, SPE, for pulling this, in particular, section 103. So thank you, well done. And also, I'd like to say season's greetings. Not sure if it's time yet. I know Christmas is around the corner, and I hope you're all doing well and living and keeping safe. So coming back to your first question, I'll also let me say a big thank you to the organizers of this event. I would like to stand on the existing protocol since time is fast spent. So pardon me for that. So I mean, looking back, I listened to Joe Modi and also to the SPE, the council chair discussion, and I think they covered it all. They nailed it very well. So they made life a lot easier for the panel. But if I just share a few perspective on this, overall, progress has been made through all kinds of policies, strategies in different parts of the world. I think the general assessment is we're way behind. The world is losing its carbon budget. If you listen to some advocacy, we pretty much, if at best, if we're able to achieve 2 to 3 degrees Celsius by end of the century, then we're lucky. So overall, I will say it's been quite slow. And the reason for that is there's a massive amount of money required. The world needs about $110 trillion for clean energy transition. But if you look back since this whole COP journey started in Berlin in 1995, Europe has been on the lead in terms of driving investment in green energy through a lot of subsidy. So like the SPE president did mention, when you go to the Western world, you see lots of wind farms, solar farms, green hydrogen, lots of EV charging, biofuels. Lately, I saw some trials regarding a sustainable aviation fuel. So there's a whole summary. There's been a lot of progress in some areas. Different countries have taken different paths. US has been off and on. We always start with American economy because they're the biggest. Under Obama, the policies were different, and under Trump, America went back, and then Democrat is trying to bring the world back on that green energy path with the approval of the Inflation Reduction Act, in which over $600 billion be made available to support in research, investment in green energy. But again, if you watch what's happening in the US, there's also a concern because Donald Trump has said it very clearly. If he wins the election next year, he's actually going to scrap all those green investment and take America back into the fossil fuel economy. So it's quite challenging, I must say, and it's the same thing you see across the world. So it depends on which party is in power, what are the policies they're pursuing, and then the ideology. And then you see in Europe today, you see the emergence of far right parties winning election. So it's a bit of a concern, I must say, in terms of the path the world is traveling. But China has come on board, even though it took them a while. China has the highest EV production country today in the world and making highest number of EV across for supply to the world. We've seen heavy fossil fuel dependent economies focused on decarbonization. Nigeria is a clear example where this focus is around you're going to continue producing oil and gas, but how do you decarbonize that to reduce the carbon intensity? So lots of countries are actually raising in terms of monetizing their fossil fuel resource so as to beat that this transition travel. Qatar just recently announced, mega investment in the North Field. They're heading towards about 160 million ton per annum LNG export. You see the same thing across lots of the countries where they're trying to accelerate the pace of investment in fossil fuel, so they can then use that cash to now fund the green energy investment. Because the biggest challenge today is green energy sources are still struggling to get finance. Returns are very low. In Seplat, we've looked at a number of these green energy opportunities. I can tell you it's very challenging to deliver better return on investment in terms of renewable energy investment. Our former vice president also announced the Nigerian Energy Transition Plan, $1.9 trillion required to get us to 2060 net zero. So overall, I think what we see is funding and return on investment remains big challenges for renewable energy business. You heard it in Prell's discussion. Nowadays, investors want a lot of money back, unfortunately, and the unit cost of some of these green energy sources, we've seen them falling, continue to go down. But our belief is, look, we need all forms of energy to support the evolving energy mix required to meet the increasing demand for energy. Some sectors are very easy to decarbonize. You heard about the EV proliferation in Europe, but some sectors are very, very challenging to decarbonize. So it's not the same, it's horses for courses. But the key drivers we see going into the future is that what will shape the whole energy transition. One is energy security, affordability, and environmental sustainability. Policies, regulation, funding, technology, geopolitics, our behaviors, and also events like Ukraine invasion or COVID. A lot of all these kind of block swans events also have an impact on how we travel the path. So finally, I'll say for us, how we see this from a Seplat point of view is progress has been very, very slow. More actions required. There's been lots of talk and lots of pledges. The cost implication is huge, but we strongly believe that oil and gas will remain a big part of that future energy mix. Gas is taking a major role in that as transitioning field, like you heard earlier on. But at the end of the day, the way we see it is it's all going to be determined by affordability, security, and also the primary drivers, and then environmental sustainability. Because if people cannot afford any form of energy, you're just wasting your time. It's going to go back to the same old age of coal or biomass. And that's where we think that energy affordability remains the #1 primary driver that will drive that transition. I'll just pause there now for my co-panelists. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Engineer FB. And in the short time, you're giving us a lot to ponder about. So indeed, it's challenging. There's been some progress. It's slow, but again, it's challenging, and it also drives the need for urgency. If we need to achieve the goal of net zero emissions by 2050, we have to do things differently. And it's also important that we mention that it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. So the developed countries are moving at a different pace than in Nigeria, for instance, where we're fossil fuel dependent, and our pace is different, our economic realities are different, and energy access is different for us here. So thanks for giving us that perspective. Mr. Leyo will have to run, I think, soon. So let's just come home, really, and look at the conversation around balanced transition and delve deeper into why that is important. In Nigeria, for instance, we're among the top 10, we have among the top 10 gas reserves in the world, over 200 trillion scope of gas. And the realization is we have to develop our fossil resources. We are energy poor as a country and as a continent. So, Engineer Leyo, if you could talk on why it's important to have that balanced transition. And also, we've heard over and over again in this conversation, in fact, Mr. Salahuddin asked us who's going to fund it. That is the reality that is before us. The funding conversation is very important. And so when we talk about the roles of the various stakeholders, if you could also just touch on how the funding and investment organizations can play a role in achieving the energy transition, and also especially funding of oil and gas, how we can achieve the balance then. Engineer,
All right,
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
Okay. Again, I'll stand on existing protocols, and great appreciation for inviting me to be part of this and allowing me to join them virtually. Two questions you asked. Let me take them one after the other. The first one is around the need to achieve a balanced transition. What's the role of oil and gas, especially as we think about that in Africa? So our energy demand is going to grow, and projection is that it will grow by 30% by the time we get to 2050. We'll see a growth from about 7 billion to 10 billion by the time we achieve 2050. And when you think about growth in population, what accompanies that is also increased energy demand. But with that increased energy demand, you're going to have increased emissions, and that continues to transform our climate. So when you look at the consequence of not being able to balance the weather of the earth, the sustainability of the planet's ecosystem is significantly under threat, as well as the future of humankind and the stability of the global economy. And that's what the whole debate about COP28 is all about. Previous speakers have spoken about the agreement in Paris to try and ensure that we go back to limit temperature rise to the pre-industrial era of less than 1.5 degrees centigrade. And if we're going to do this, we need to play with the world energy mix. It has to be altered. Less carbon emitting energy sources, more cleaner energy sources, making that available. But reality is that the world is responding. Japan boosts its own renewable energy target for 2030 mix, and their indication is that they're going to be having between 36 to 38% of power supply by 2030. In the next 2 years, Norway has indicated that all their vehicles will be 100%. If you look at EIA projection, it also indicates that renewable sources will account for about 31% of world energy by 2040. And half of that is going to come from hydropower, wind, solar power, and it will continue to grow rapidly in the coming decades. Now, as much as renewable is the future, reality is that renewable itself needs support for 3 key reasons. One is you have short-term fluctuations that occurs where anytime you have what you call cloud cover wind gust, it causes large variability and swing in output from your solar panel and wind turbines. And all of this can interfere with your power quality and frequency, can destabilize your grid, damage your utility infrastructure, damage customer equipment. Also, you see day-to-day variability in wind speed, in direction, which in itself affects the output. But the last one of those vulnerability that you have in renewables is the seasonal changes, where the wind output varies through the year based on high seasonal wind pattern. Now, this is where oil and gas energy sources have a role to play. And if you spoke very well about this, it's not just at the global level that you're thinking this through, it's also applicable in Africa. It's more of gas, it's less of oil. You see a lot more reduction in the liquid fuel, in the liquid hydrocarbon that we have, and people are moving more towards gas. Gas is recognized as the destination fuel, but in some other parlance, gas has also been said to be actually not just a destination fuel, it's going to be a final fuel. You won't find a situation where there'll be total elimination of hydrocarbon. What we would see is the percentage of that in the energy mix will continue to reduce, and there'll be more reduction with the liquid than what we find with the gas. So we still have a lot of products in our hand in Africa. If you look at the map of Africa today, you will find more and more that the heat map of hydrocarbon discovery is getting bigger and bigger. Currently, I'm in Namibia. We just had some very huge discoveries offshore. Namibia was never seen to have had oil. Mozambique has its own hydrocarbon. Tanzania has, Sao Tome and Principe has. All over the whole of Africa, South Africa, everywhere, you continue to find hydrocarbon in huge volume, and those hydrocarbons will count for something. So I think Africa would play a lot more role over the next 1-2 decades, even going to 3 decades, as supplying the steady energy that is needed in order to continue the journey on transition. And I think that's what where I'm going to stop when I look at my thoughts around the need to achieve a balanced energy transition. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of advocacy for us to leave the hydrocarbon. But reality is that we need a base load that will continue to provide the energy that the world needs today. And hydrocarbon will play a lot of role in that. If I quickly move on to the stakeholder, the issue around investment, financing organization, how they contribute to achieve the energy transition in Africa. This is an emotional discussion. It's a debate that has been going on. On one hand, there is a moral burden that Africa particularly places on the Western nation when it comes to monetizing the oil and gas that we have. I do recognize that Salahuddin, when he was speaking, talked about the imperative of moving, and I don't think that's in doubt. Africa is in deep poverty, and we have significant energy needs. A transition that does not guarantee the three imperatives of energy is grossly unfair, where you cannot guarantee affordability, like if we spoke about, availability cannot be guaranteed, and reliability cannot be guaranteed, then you are really not starting. But where the moral burden comes is when you start looking at Africa's contribution to the current climatic challenges that we have. It's extremely minimal. In fact, today, projection is that it's just about 1% of the global emission that you can attribute to Africa. And even if Africa goes ahead and produces current hydrocarbon reserve, you're not going to have more than 3%. But yet it disproportionately bears the biggest burden of the climatic change. So the Global Environmental Report indicated that 5 out of the 10 countries that have been severely impacted due to climatic challenges, they are in Africa, with the top 2 in Africa. And these are challenges, these are countries that their economies have been badly managed. So when the world pushes for energy transition, while signing on to it, Africa's argument continues to be that it has to be at a different pace. It is inevitable, but it's also unfair to demand that transition and deny Africa the opportunity of powering its economic development and growth from the same resource that the Western world used and has landed us in the global mess where we are today. So we talk about just transition in Africa. We will transit. The train had left the station. There's no denying that, but you must give Africa the pace for it to be able to come on stream and meet its own development needs from the God-given resource that it has. Now, as sound as this argument is, we're struggling with financing those opportunities. And more, as we continue to see the hydrocarbon that is being discovered, the world is reluctant to fund anything that has to do with fossil fuel development. The world has practically moved away from funding it. Finance ministers of the industrialized nations have signed on to agreements that practically prohibit funding of this sector. So the options that we have are few going forward. And it's going to take a lot of ingenuity of government and energy companies to get through the door. Economics are still very robust compared to that of renewables. And I'd like to suggest a few things that I think we can do in Africa in order for us to be able to fund these opportunities that we have, recognizing the current realities around global funding and the need to be able to also power our own progress. Number one is to do what I would call delayed gratification. And that delayed gratification has to be by companies, oil companies, and shareholders in order for them to be able to grow organically. It's not as if the world is saying we will not still need or we will still not use hydrocarbon or fossil fuel. We say we will not fund it. So the barrier to being able to fund it is quite high. If you do recognize that, then you need to look more inwards into what you can do. So I think first thing is delayed gratification, where we're not talking about give me now, give me today, and I don't care what happens tomorrow. You're thinking about tomorrow, the ability for you to be able to fund it, and you're reserving a significant part of your revenue, of your profit to be able to grow in an organic way. The second thing I think we should do is to adopt the IJV model, where the government is spared the burden of raising funds, but leveraging the financial capacity of partners to unlock our oil and gas potentials. And we've seen that work. If you look at NLNG today, government did not put down a dime. Even for Train 7 that is under construction, that is about 52% completed, they're all being funded by shareholders and the balance sheet of NLNG. So that model works. That's a model that I think we need to embrace. One other option that we can look at is to leverage the capacity of investment funds like the pension funds. Today, the Nigerian pension fund is estimated at about 15 trillion naira. It's money that is sitting down that could be better used to unlock value. It's one that we can also look at the influence of African Development Bank, local banks coming together. Somebody has talked about collaboration and being able to pull the necessary funds that is needed in order to be able to grow the oil and gas sector in Africa. And maybe the last one that I will speak to is the issue of community trust funds. There's nothing that says that communities where hydrocarbons are found cannot set up a trust fund where they themselves be part of funding the development of oil and gas in Africa. It's also in the mix. So there are a few things you can play around, but I think if you stay at the high level is to recognize one, while the resources are being found more and more, ability to attract funding is getting more challenging. In order for us to be able to go after it, we need to look beyond the traditional multilateral institutions who are the ones that today are no longer extending funding to the oil and gas sector. I think I'd like to stop at that and hand it back to you, Ella. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lay. I think in the short time you've given us a masterclass. Thank you very much. Very detailed analysis, and you've spoken quite clearly on the need to have a balanced transition, the challenge that is before us, the increasing demand for energy in Africa, balancing that with the economic realities and the need for us to really develop the continent and the nation that we are in. And then also regarding the investment and funding, it's a real challenge. What we've seen is that the traditional investment arms or the traditional investment bodies that we have are no longer interested, quote unquote, on oil and gas. We need to look inwards. We need to do things differently, and that's where the creativity and innovation comes in. And you've given us your view on 4 things that we can do differently in Africa. So attract the funding, get the funding, how we can get funding by ourselves within the institutions that we have. So thank you for giving that. I think that is something that is very valuable that we can take away and begin to work that in our circles and continue to have that conversation as we go on. So thanks a lot. We'll then still go on this conversation and talk about the progress of energy transition. So I'll come back to Elo, being a general manager at City and Environment. From where you sit, how do you think that we have progressed in the energy transition? Would you agree that we're slow, as FP said? Have we made some progress? Maybe some things you can share from the environmental perspective. Can you hear us? Okay. Okay, maybe she's trying to open. Are you able to unmute? Okay, I can go.
Yeah, you need to promote her to a speaker view. I mean, currently the view she's on. Okay.
So I have been able to unmute now. Thank you very much. And thanks, Ella, for the question, and many thanks to both Effie and Leia for those masterclass. We may need to pay you for what you have shared with us already, because those are indeed, I was taking quite a lot of notes. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depends on where you are, and standing on existing protocol. Ella, thank you so much for that question. Indeed, the journey has been slow, but I believe it was Leia that said that this train has left the station. So we are on a journey, and we will get to this destination at some point in time. It's important to note that while things are slow, there has been a lot of progress in the industry. And I will mention a few, and the way we are looking at it, the way we are dimensioned it to be able to say, yes, we are making progress. And in 3 ways, I will say the we have been looking at energy transition as industry and how we can actually reduce the emissions is through the lens of avoid, reduce, and compensate. And when you look at avoid, this is something that for existing projects that we have, there's actually nothing we can do for now. So I'll come back to existing projects. But for new projects, it is important that we look at what technology is available with respect of bringing projects that are low carbon intensity into the market. The challenges of this has already been described by our previous speakers. Getting funding for new projects today is very tough. The criteria is set very high for environmentally friendly, low carbon projects. So there is a lot that the industry has been doing with respect to research and development to ensure that as we bring new projects in, these are projects with no flares, these are projects that address carbon intensity. And in the reduced phase, and this is where we sit today as an operator, as many of us are operators, is around how do we manage our flares today? How are we managing our flares today? And there, what I have seen is the focus on operational efficiency. I can speak for myself in Shell. In the past, keeping our flares down, keeping our compressors uptime at the highest point has traditionally been an operational problem. So it's for the production people to solve. But today, what I see is an integrated view. I see operations on the table, I see production on the table, I see logistics on the table, I see contract and procurement on the table, I see finance on the table. And people are asking questions, how can I get that spare part in faster? People are asking questions, can I fly it in overnight? Logistics is coming and giving in advice of how to get people to site that can restore tripped compressors a lot faster. In the past, everybody looked away. It was a production problem, and we had system upsets that could last up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But now I see a system where we are actually tracking mean time to recovery, and we're talking days rather than weeks or months to be able to get our systems back on track. This is definitely progress because now it's a business solution. Reduction of flares is now a business solution rather than an operational problem. Let's not also forget methane, because we tend to focus a lot on flares. I also see the alignment by companies and by countries on the OGMP. For those that are not familiar with the OGMP, this is a UNEP initiative focused on the measurement of methane to be able to reduce the emission of methane. We all know what you can't measure, you can't fix. And what the OGMP 2.0, which is what we're running with, which was an alignment made in 2020, is to ensure that in all member facilities, we are clear on how much methane is being produced. And next step then will now be to have a game plan of reducing these emissions. So that is progress, because for me in Shell, we're signed up to it. And I know for a lot of the other companies in Nigeria, they're signed up to it. Nigeria as an organization is signed up to it. So that focus is very helpful. And that focus shows a lot of progress with respect to what we can do with reduction of emissions. The last part is about compensation. And this is where the net zero comes in. Now, we must always remind ourselves that when we say net zero, it does not necessarily mean throwing out fossil fuels. It means bringing in a lot more renewables that can compensate for the fossil fuels to ensure that the net balance is zero. And what are we doing? There's a lot of new energies companies been set up. For us in Shell, for example, we have Olon that's doing quite a lot with respect to bringing renewable energies into Nigeria. And we have invested in power companies that are also focused on clean energies. And a lot of these things will work in the long term as we begin to grow and as we begin to expand those businesses. We'll work towards that whole compensation of fossil fuels that we are unable to reduce. So the future is great, but the future will be hampered by funding, because you need funding for research, you need funding for new technologies. And without this new research, that pace that we would like to run with to be able to reduce our fossil fuel and replace with renewables will be slow. So to summarize, yes, I do see progress. Yes, the progress might be slow, but I think we have made massive milestones in terms of moving away from a place where we do not know what to do and we don't even measure what we are meeting, to where we are now, where we are deliberately measuring and we are deliberately putting plans in place of how to reduce and eliminate fossil fuel emissions from fossil fuels in our business. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, and very important points. And you've given us those three words to ponder about as we go about our own task and about our work. Avoid, reduce, compensate. Another key thing that you mentioned is around the mindset shift. I really like that because it's not so much around just what you do, but so much around the mindset. So it's not one person's problem. It's no longer the problem of the HSE department or the operations team, but it's really around every one of us pulling together and changing our mindset to see how we can reduce emissions and reduce our flares, reduce pollution across our production and our operations. So thanks for sharing your perspective. We'll come to Fireman now, and we'll also talk on another key lever in achieving the energy transition and net zero emissions, which is technology. And she will also then speak on some of the digital technologies that are enabling decarbonization in the industry, just to share a few on that.
Thank you very much, Ila. Please confirm you can hear me clear.
Yes, we can.
Okay. I also want to thank SPE Port Harcourt for inviting me to share my perspective, as well as the perspective of SLB on this very important topic. I recognize the presence of our other very distinguished panelists who are all industry leaders and have spoken well on this topic as well. Coming to digitalization, indeed, it is at the heart of the energy transition because it is set to drive efficiency at scale, while also driving a reduction in high cost of production. In SLB, excuse me, please, but I'm also having a cold, so my voice is slightly impacted. At SLB, digital is one of the three engines of growth in our rebranded focus on net zero by 2050. And decarbonization is critical to energy security. So the oil and gas industry really needs to take ownership of decarbonizing the fossil fuel we have today. Because as all the speakers have spoken well, from the industry speaker to the keynote speaker and the other panelists, oil and gas is going to be or remain a part of the energy mix for a long time to come. While the rest of the cleaner energies are developing technologies, driving down costs, and really becoming more mature for the market and the energy demand that exists today, the oil and gas industry needs to focus on decarbonizing what we already have to ensure that we still maintain the temperature levels at 1.5 degrees. So at SLB, this is a critical part of our focus. We believe that our ambition is to become a global technology leader for that industrial decarbonization that we're all looking for, providing clean energy and leveraging our intellectual capital of over 100 years of industry experience, our industrialization capabilities across a global footprint. We want to harness all of that and provide the solution that the industry is looking for. Now let's look at some of the key focus areas for decarbonization today. There is the carbon capture and storage solution that is maturing at different levels across the globe, maybe not in Africa or in Nigeria, but as we have heard, this is really taking off in many other Western countries. Methane reduction has become a key focus area, especially as the US has set out rules for methane reduction by 30% from oil and gas industries. Flare emission is also an area that requires attention As well, there is the other industries. Cementing operations in well construction are also huge culprits in emitting CO2 into the atmosphere. These are all very cost-intensive ventures if we want to try and eliminate them. But then for decarbonization measures to really be sustainable, then we need to be robust in the way that we simulate these processes and provide the right kind of sensitivity analysis so that when we make predictions and eventually execute, the execution will be on point. We will not have spent time wasting the amount of investment that went into that venture. As a result, there is need for accurate simulations, there is need for controlled measurements of the results, and there is need for continuous monitoring of the systems to ensure that they stay fully optimized for the entire decarbonization cycle. All right, so for such ventures, especially for something like carbon capture and storage, the same degree of subsurface characterization that is required today for oil and gas production is similar, if not more intensive, for that of carbon capture and storage. So what digitalization has done in this space is to provide power through machine learning and AI and other domain AI tools that allow faster processing of these studies and enabling several scenarios to be run in seconds rather than having to run scenarios in weeks and months. Now, several scenarios can be run in seconds to produce the kind of result that allows the oil and gas industry to make informed decisions. This kind of speeds up the process of ranking and screening opportunities for decarbonization projects. Besides digital technologies, other low carbon initiatives and technological breakthroughs are coming up every day. And speaking from the Schlumberger perspective again, point of view, there are automation solutions that are ramping up every day, enabling remote operations to go on without human intervention in very difficult scenarios. For example, in industries that have had to abate emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, like steel industries, like cement manufacturing industries, power industries, there's automation process that is being deployed to really capture the carbon in those scenarios and drive down cost solutions. So again, I would just highlight some of these initiatives that we have available today in the market. Most of all these technologies are available in today's market, so they are not far-fetched. The digital solutions are all available. There are also design and modeling tools that are available. And for example, one of which is the methane capture equipment. In October, Schlumberger announced I said Schlumberger, but our rebranded name is SLB, forgive me. In October, SLB announced a new methane monitoring, emissions monitoring tool, a very light tool, low cost, self-installation and continuous monitoring tool, state of the art, that allows this equipment to stay in those environments where methane is produced, and it detects leakages. It uses sensors to analyze the result and transmit it back to base where the information can be utilized and consumed to make decisions. And this kind of technological breakthroughs is where the oil and gas industry really has leverage in this whole energy mix conversation and balanced transition conversation. Technology has been at the bedrock of previous energy transitions, from steam to coal to wood to several kinds of transitions that have happened in the past. It has been technological breakthroughs that have enabled those transitions. And today we are at the cusp of another transition. Technology is going to be a key enabler for a balanced transition. So these are technology solutions that today I would say are available in Nigeria. For example, I would like to mention one key one, well construction cementing. It's a process that also emits a lot of CO2. But as of today, we've been able to produce a synthetic cement, which we call Eco Shield, that is green and does not utilize all the CO2 emitting Portland cement, but still achieves cementing well in the right kind of well integrity that enables us to construct our wells safely and sustainably. So these technologies are available today to allow us to progress with oil and gas production and continue to provide the stopgap for the world in general, while the energy mix matures in the coming years. So with that, I will stop here, Ila, so that we can take other questions.
Okay, thanks a lot, Emma, and thanks for really outstanding list. It's not extensive, is what we can see that a lot is happening in the technology space, in the digital space. And as you mentioned, there is a lot for us to do in monitoring, in automation, faster processing. And it points back to the point that Elo made, that what you can't measure, you can't improve. So technology is making an impact there and is very useful there. Just to say to our technology savvy professionals in the room that there is a lot happening there and there is room to do more. So thanks again for that, for those points that you mentioned. We've actually touched on a lot around the stakeholders. So we talked about policy, we talked about government, how we need to ensure that there are policies in place, and also not just putting the policies in place, we actually have to implement. Everyone has touched on the producing companies and certain companies, which also Fayama mentioned. There is a lot happening there in terms of operational efficiency, technologies that we can do to improve, and also human capacity development and education. So there is some gap there that we need to continually improve to ensure that as a nation, as a continent, we're ready for the energy transition, we're ready in terms of the right skills and having the people well positioned to ensure that we're able to meet the needs of the energy transition. So I'd like FP to just touch briefly. We have oil and gas professionals across different age ranges and experience levels, from the young to the more experienced. How do we keep our skills relevant? Because at the heart of it is, where do I come in as a professional today? And what can I do? There's energy transition. It's upon us. You said the train has left the station, so it's not something I'm thinking about tomorrow or now. The energy transition is upon us. Do we need to reskill? Do we need to upskill? Those are buzzwords, but let's hear your own perspective on how to do transition.
All right, thanks, Ella. I think people have started reskilling already. If I go back to when I started my career and I look back at especially a lot of young people have started pivoting into this green energy. I know some of even your former Shell colleagues, younger engineers who are now actually very heavy into solar. Some of you might know someone like Ralph. I think Okenye is pretty much very, very heavily involved in solar investment and solar opportunities. But if I step back and just listen to all the conversations we've had today from, Leia, from Elo, and also Fayama, I think oil and gas still has a big, opportunity for you guys, younger people. Those of us in that few years will be gone. But I think that's one thing to first know, that there's still going to be a lot of work. All these massive discoveries you heard Leia just talked about, they'll need people to work on them, to develop them, whether you're a geoscientist or a reservoir engineer, all the way to surface engineers, production engineers. So there's already there's quite a large future career for this profession going forward, looking forward in the next 20, 30 years. According to IEA and lots of even the OPEC outlook, they still see demand for oil and gas growing till around 2040 or so. You know, this thing keeps pushing. Some years ago, we had that the peak of oil and gas was 2020 and then later 2030. So there is still quite massive opportunity for you, for younger people coming up. The other bit is about reskilling. Yes, you're right. I've seen quite a number of people already building up new competencies. And whether I would like it or not, the oil and gas or energy industry is going to be part of that transition. If you listen to all the earlier conversation, whether in terms of capability, in terms of human resource, finance, technology, it's going to come out of the oil and gas industry. And you can see quite a number of the super majors already taking big step in that direction. So looking on the skills requirements, I'll say if you take something like CCUS, there's a pilot going on even here, being funded by IFC. The work is being done by Halliburton, and then BCG, Bolton Consulting Group, is providing consultants. So they're looking for pilot sites or for carbon capture and storage. So all those your skills around sequence stratigraphy and geomodeling, all that's going to come in when you're looking at CCUS, right, or CCS, reservoir simulation, to predict how those reservoirs will hold the CO2 you're injecting. It's all going to be a lot of your subsurface skills. And then on the surface side, you're dealing with CO2, which is quite corrosive. So you need some of the skills our surface engineers, facility engineers have already is going to be applicable. If you look at some companies are looking at CO2 for EOR. I think Occidental has been very bullish around doing a lot of EOR from using CO2. Similarly, again, you still need, of course, you need to change skill up in terms of the unique disciplines, but a lot of the skills you have already are still going to be applicable. When I look at some of my friends who have moved into like building wind farms globally, they're bringing their project management skills into how do you execute those projects, because a project is a project, whether it's a hydrogen project or whether it's drilling for oil and gas wells in the deep water or shallow water. You do have quite a number of skills that are quite similar. You might have to change some aspect of it because some of the technology is kind of unique. And you see also where even old facilities are being converted, oil and gas facilities being converted to use for green hydrogen in terms of hydrogen network distribution and the offtake model. So there's so much, I think, in my view, you guys, all of us in the oil and gas industry, younger generation, there's still a huge career ahead. I think what's going to make the difference is some aspects you can adapt, some you might need to reskill, retool, but I think there's a massive great future for every one of you in this call. And SPE will also remain quite integral and strategic in terms of moving with the tide. And I see that happening already. In fact, sometimes I wonder whether SPE will change from petroleum, from Society of Petroleum Engineering to Society of something else, because clearly the world energy mix demand is going to straddle all the portfolio. One last one for me is, I see some people also moving to mining already. Don't forget that the so-called green energy relies a lot on massive mining. I don't think people have actually thought about it. The demand for lithium, cobalt, nickel, all these metals you need to build a wind farm, you need for EVs, batteries. So there's so much space. But clearly, I think my advice would be not to get complacent. You got to move with the tide. You got to reskill in some areas. You got to adapt your skill. I spoke to somebody this morning, just came in, visiting from Canada. He now works for a nuclear company in Toronto. This was a well engineer who was here with us in Seplat, but had to move for family reasons. He's working on the building, doing life extension on a nuclear plant in Toronto. So I must say that the skills you have, the critical thinking, problem solving, like Ella talked about in terms of driving down mean time to recovery when you have a compressor trip. All these skills are still things you're going to apply even in the new green energy world. So don't be worried, don't be scared. The future is great. I fully agree with earlier speaker. The future has a huge potential for all the SPE members in this call and the world all over. Thank you. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. And I was just saying thanks a lot for that. The future is green, and I think it's green in every way. It's green in net zero, it's green, it's hopeful, there's a lot that it holds. There are massive opportunities available for all the professionals in the industry today. And as we say, every strategy, that's why we're here as SP members. We sort of have the upper hand. We see the future ahead and we can properly position ourselves. So for our audience, those in the room and online, we can take one question for sake of time. And just as we begin to round up this panel, I want to have our panelists use their superpowers and give us some expo to the future. So in just a few words, if you can tell us, say 30 seconds, what do you foresee as the future? What do you think the landscape of the oil and gas industry will be in the next 10 years? Just a few words. We'll start with Megan.
Okay, no, thank you very much for starting with me. I think two things that I see. One, I see more exit of the IOCs from a number of traditional places. These are companies that need to show to their shareholders and governments that they are taking practical steps to reduce their carbon and methane emissions. And unfortunately, we will see more of that in Nigeria, particularly with the way we continue to vandalize our pipeline, struggle to keep product in the pipeline. Nigeria remains unattractive for investment funds of shareholders and governments. I think we will see more and more of that. But the second thing that I see is that we're likely to witness more consolidation that will take place among the current players in Nigeria for the exploration of the resources that we have. I had spoken to that earlier on, that it is going to be challenging to fund it. I foresee that many more will come together, collaborate. We'll likely see some mergers that will happen in the local play that we have today in order to be able to access some of the opportunities that currently exist in our country. So two things. One, IOC's exit, I think we're losing the case on being able to keep them. And I don't want to sound pessimistic on that, but it's reality. These are people who have made commitment to reduce their carbon footprints. Our operation is not encouraging that. But the second one is consolidation in the industry.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Megan. It's giving us a reality check and quite true. So thanks for giving us your perspective on the next 10 years. Final over to you, please.
Did you call me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes, so for me, starting with Nigeria, I see a situation where we begin to mature in our regulations and policies. Tying back to what Leah said, in order for us to get our acts right in country to even standardize the production of oil and gas amongst our indigenous operators. Then globally, I still see the oil and gas industry serving as the leader in clean energies because the expertise is there, the experience is there, the financial capability is also available to the oil and gas industry. And so it will serve as the cradle for most of other clean energy solutions. And as a result of that, oil and gas, decarbonized oil and gas will continue to remain as part of the energy mix going forward.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Maturity regulation policies. We've had a few big concerns, so it'll be good to get to a place where we're more stable as a country and as a continent. So next we'll take Elizabeth.
Yeah, please confirm you can hear me because Ella, your network was breaking a bit there for me.
Oh, sorry, we can't hear you. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So a couple of things I see in the future. One is collaboration. I see that happening a lot more because it is clear that this is no longer one person's problem. It is our problem. So in country, I see a lot of collaboration. And we already see that happening in the OPTS, for example, for which I chair the energy, the environment and safety subcom, where we've already set out a project with McKinsey to do some form of work on our energy emissions as members. So I see a lot of that because we want to measure, we want to understand, and then we want to be able to put a roadmap in place. What do I see? I see accountability. And going back to my example just now about the OPTS example, there's a lot of speak, there's a lot of nice words, there's a lot of hand waving around reduction of emissions in country and in the world. But it's time for accountability. It's time to put the numbers where they are and challenge ourselves. Who are the big players? Who are the big numbers? And how can we bring them down? I believe it was Laird I mentioned earlier around the percentage of how much Africa is contributing to the world emissions. It's time for us to take accountability of those numbers and be able to speak in global forums how and why we should be allowed to run our energy transition at our own pace. I see difficult choices ahead of us because it's very easy to say turn out the lights, but just like we've seen from the impact of the Ukraine war, it is not that easy. So there will be difficult choices to be made as we are hurtling towards 2030. We have a lot of companies that have plans, a lot of countries that have accelerated plans 2025, 2026. As that timelines get closer and closer, we will be set, difficult choices will be set before us to make. And last, I see Africa rising to the table to take the microphone and put the challenge where it is. I see us putting the feet of the West to the fire. There is part of the COP26 is a responsibility of funding by the Western world for the more undeveloped countries. We don't see that coming in, and that discussion needs to be had. Just saying energy transition is no longer sufficient. We need to back it up with action. Thank you.
Thanks. It was a very important and apt point. So it's a show me world. You've mentioned collaboration, you mentioned difficult choices. There will be some trade-offs. Africa rising to the table, that's good to know and good to expect. And yeah, so thanks for sharing those. And accountability, you mentioned very important points. And last but not least, on this particular point, what we see for the future of oil and gas the next 10 years, in a few words.
Okay, I think this is a difficult one. I'm also, there's a lot of uncertainty. I see lots of uncertainties regarding Nigeria because you're very particular about Nigeria. But if I look globally, clearly what you see is NOCs are taking a different path in terms of wanting to attract a lot more investors in most of the national oil company, whether it's NNPC, whether it's Petronas, Aramco. And then you have the IOCs who are pretty much rationalizing their portfolio. I think Leia talked about it. If you look at a very good one that's quite obvious, ExxonMobil is clear. Exxon is going to focus on Guyana and Brazil, and then the Permian Basin in the US. And you saw they just acquired PNR for $62 billion. Chevron also just acquired Hess in order to get into Guyana. So the real key for me is capital will go where capital is welcomed. And that's the point you heard earlier on, that Nigeria is not really an attractive destination for investment. So when I go out as part of the Seplat team, we're pitching for investors to come to Nigeria, I can tell you it is hard, and it's getting harder every day. Whether you go to New York or you go to London, it is very, very challenging. And the government has got a lot of huge tasks ahead of them to make this country to become investment friendly. And that's what I've learned since I left Shell. You can have all the resources and all that. If you don't have funding, forget it. It's a waste of time because there's so much resources globally, and capital will go to Namibia, capital will go to South Africa, capital will go to all these other countries and will not come here. So there is hope. I must say there's a huge potential for us to really raise our game. Independence, indigenous consolidation, you heard earlier on, I fully agree with that. But what's going to be critical is how does this country really become attractive for investors to come in? And also I see oil and gas investment actually ramping up heavily globally in destinations where the environment for investment is quite conducive. And also you see a lot of oil and gas companies taking a big stake also in the green energy investment, whether it's solar green hydrogen, or whether you're looking at wind. You saw the news recently where I think it was 2 major IOCs that have to pull out of 2 major wind projects in the US. But as you go through all this investment circle, you learn from and then you begin to look back on after action review, lessons learned. You'll see all those lessons coming back to plan a lot of investment into green energy. So in my view, overall, I would say there's going to be a lot of investment coming still into our industry. Countries will differ. The intensity of investment will vary from country to country, and at the same time, our industry will also be taking a major chunk in terms of investing in the green energy world. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, SPE. A lot to ponder on. So the reality again before us, IOC is leaving, but the LOC is beginning to take a different path. We've talked about how huge potential that's available. But the truth is capital will go where capital is welcome. And I think that's the body that is before us. As players in the industry, what are we playing our roles to ensure that we're producing and we're doing what's within our ability to ensure that we're producing cleaner energy, we're reducing emissions as much as possible. I think everyone on the call can agree with me that this has been a power-packed panel. There's been a lot of said. Wherever you are, panel for taking the time to share their knowledge of wisdom. It's been a lot that has been shared. Globally, the pace has been slow, but there is indeed much more that we can do. It's challenging. We've talked about a key challenge of funding, but still it also allows us to look inwardly and to be more innovative and creative in terms of looking for solutions to the funding challenges. There's been progress in the environmental space, digital space, but there again lies the opportunity for professionals like us to do more, to monitor our emissions, and in so doing reduce. All the stakeholders have different roles to play, but indeed collaboration is very important. And so none is more important than the other in essence. The future looks bright, massive growth future. SPE is the place to be. So for all of us, I'll say we're in the right conversation. Again, thanks panelists. We're highly delighted that you will take the time to join us, and we appreciate your thoughts that have been shared with us. We'll continue to have this conversation. We have a whole week dedicated to this, a lot of activities lined up. Please join us whenever you can. But again, thanks for your time. So please, another round of applause for our time. Okay, so at this point, I'll hand over to Captain Jay to continue with the rest of the opening ceremony. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, here you have it. The only point that made me, react a bit was when I heard about the funding with our pension fund. I'd like to hand over to the section chair for the closing remarks. And thereafter, we'll go downstairs, and for the people online, we try to carry along as much as we can. And when the full week packed with programs, and you can see today, Monday working day, we also need time, sacrifice part of our lunch and our day to be here. So that shows already that there's a lot more to come through the rest of the week. So I'll hand over to the session chair and our chairperson. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining for this opening ceremony. The team, evolving role of oil and gas in achieving a balanced transition. I really want to appreciate our guest speakers, Joseph Mordi, Saikia, and the panelists for joining us and for all they said. You have really set the pace for this week event. We are grateful. Yeah, we heard it. That's the IOCs we need, for the room for the LOC to operate. And so we are looking forward to that phase. Yeah, we still have a lot to do. We shouldn't be so worried that although the transition will happen,
but we have a lot to play. Collaboration is key. So let's get up and be clear on how we are going to join in this trade that has left the station. Well, this week promises to be a full week packed with lots of programs and events. And I really, with everyone on the call, please get more people involved. We have a lot to share. We have a lot to give. There's a lot for you to learn. As the year is being coming to an end, we need to be prepared for January for 2024. And so please join us. Tomorrow, promise, we have another event on finance and career. It's not just about making money. We've heard that finance is a key thing for us, and we are ready for you. We have someone who is very strong in finance coming to talk to us tomorrow on finance, on how we can key in and be the ones to be able to provide that finance for us to continue this transition. So thanks everyone and good day.
Please stay on the call, ladies and gentlemen. Can we make our way downstairs? And people on the line, online, join us. The camera will still be here as we unveil. We unveil the SPE week downstairs. So let's make our way. Okay. So we're all heading downstairs now. I think